Robert A. Kotick, also known as Bobby Kotick, was born in 1963, presumably via summoning circle. It's hard to pass what his childhood was like, as I can find no comprehensive detailings of his upbringing online. But as a billionaire CEO, you can bet it was filled with exclusive clubs, nepotism, and at least one parent who looked at him as if he were a 3-foot-long spray of fecal matter spread up the kitchen wall by a cat with IBS. So little can be gleaned about his origins that we don't even know his middle name. Likely because it's the key to sealing him away forever. Shortly after his birth, Bobby's father, Chernabog Charles Kotick, was quoted as saying, "He's gonna grow up to be a right that one," before promptly taking the head off a swan with a golf club. And actually, his dad is someone we know quite a bit about, thanks to a marriage to a Ukrainian beauty queen that's resulted in a lengthy legal battle that we'll get to in a bit. There's a lot to cover. Here's what we do know about Bobby Kotick. He was the CEO of Activision Blizzard for over 30 years, dating back to February of 1991, when then Activision was briefly known as MediaGen, before Kotick changed them back to Activision and got them off the business applications they'd been trying to branch out into making and back into video games. Even before that, he'd already been a CEO. From June to December of 1990, he was CEO of a company called Leisure Concepts. That company would also go on to change their name, eventually being known as 4Kids. That's right, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Finger guns, people. You thought Sanji sucking on a lollipop was bad? Be thankful Kotick isn't still there and he wasn't sucking on a bottle of Activision Blizzard employee breast milk. Oh, sorry, did that sound a bit out of left field? Again, we will get there. A quick aside on that second point, by the way, this would mean he was a CEO at the age of 27. Extra crazy when you consider it alongside our next point. Even before that, he considered acquiring Commodore, the company responsible for the Commodore 64, a hugely successful personal computer. He tried to acquire this company in 1987, which means he had the money to throw around on potentially huge mergers like this at age 24. This guy was like the fucking boss baby, born and bred to be a businessman. He may as well have come out of the womb in a suit and tie as an already diagnosable sociopath. If Errol Musk's Emerald Mine and so many other cases are proof of anything, it's that these billionaire startups only get this rich this quick by being cunts, or having dads who are cunts, and actually, usually both. But on the note of men in suits who serve
Hello, and welcome to The Hard Look. I'm Detective Investigator Lyle Fudj, also known as the Video Game Detective. Now I know what you're thinking right now, damn Fudj, you look good, but some of my asexual viewers may still be hung up on the case of Bobby Kotick. Not to fear, I am also hung up on that. So what am I doing out here in the great outdoors, you may be asking? Well, I find that nature aids my detective skills. I got tired of editing together random various footage of talking heads and assorted gameplay, and I got lost on the way home from buying a Twix. In this new series, The Hard Look, I'm attempting to take a deep dive into the personal history of the CEOs who so permeate our modern games industry, to see if I can find something human, relatable even. The subject of this video is the fabled fourth Rice Krispies elf himself, Bobby Kotick. And let me tell you, as I suspect is going to be the case for a lot of these videos, there's a lot to get through. In our rundown of our fun Kotick facts just a few moments ago, you may have noticed that it was almost entirely business related, and there was basically nothing about his personal life. That's because personal facts about Bobby Kotick's life are very hard to come by. As I say, it seems as if this guy was born and bred to make lines go up, and maybe do them off the back of disadvantaged sex workers. However, we do know a thing or two about his dear old dad, who likely groomed him for success. For over 10 years now, Bobby Kotick has been locked in a legal battle with Ukrainian beauty queen and his dad Charles's ex-wife, Natalia Shvachko. This dispute is over the now departed Charles's 18,000 square foot, 6-room Manhattan apartment, which a New York Post article tells me has sweeping East River views, which I assume are very nice. Supposedly, Charles bequeathed the home to Shvachko before his death in 2005 after they'd been married for 5 years, but Bobby refuses to acknowledge this and won't put the apartment in her name. And when Charles died, he left behind quite the hefty tax bill, which Bobby wants to pay off by selling the apartment. This all sounds pretty crazy, right? I mean, crazy for us. Typical for billionaire CEOs who just live on another fucking planet. But I'm not really telling you this because it's that important to the video. I'm telling you for the sake of context. Because there's another little tidbit this New York Post article mentions, nestled right in there in between all the venom and personal animosity, slyly, quietly, like a wank in the night. The article mentions that Shvachko, at the time of their marriage, was 40 years Kotick's junior. Could you imagine being married to someone 40 years older than you? I don't even want to talk to someone 40 years older than me. I want to strap into a beard-end wing invert roller coaster and watch the life drain out of them like a fucking dying Pikmin. And this right here is the honeypot to me. Sure, the legal battle has some importance, but the fact that this guy married a woman 40 years younger than him? I'm no psychiatrist and or demonologist, but that seems to suggest issues. Obviously, eye-watering age gaps are actually super common amongst the super rich, but that doesn't mean issues aren't at play. They really could just all be nonsense, you know. Next thing you know, the family's going to turn out to have ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And this should provide some of the context necessary to take a deeper look into the hole where this man's soul should be. And rest assured, we will be looking deeply into all of his holes. We've been here before, I know it.
No, we haven't.
Fuck. It's incredibly hard to find examples of Bobby Kotick talking about his father at all. The scant few musings amounting to stories of him telling him to cut the crap and focus on schoolwork when he was trying to get into the computer business at college, and the fact that by the time of his death in 2005, he was considered Bobby's estranged father. Pair this with the fact that Bobby has spent the last 10 plus years locked in a legal battle that apparently goes against his father's wishes, chasing Shvachko through courts across the country, always engineering to outspend her into oblivion, and the fact that his dad was the kind of guy to marry a woman 40 years younger than him, and I don't know, you can kind of put the pieces together. It brings to mind how the likes of Vince McMahon and Donald Trump don't like talking about their mothers. These ultra-successful billionaires tend to have deep-rooted personal trauma that comes about as a result of bad, long-standing relationships with their parents. I can't relate, as I am not successful. You might be wondering why I've spent so much time so far speculating on this man's family life. He doesn't talk about it much, there's not much about it on his Wikipedia. Why is this video about an executive who works in games spent so little time talking about the company he runs? About the games? That's because I think stuff like this is important to set the stage. I don't know if every edition of this series is going to start this way, but I find this to be a uniquely compelling case. Like observing the still twitching corpse of a dying fox whose dad just fucked a woman 40 years younger than him. So we're going to take everything we've learned so far and use it to frame Kotick's leadership of Activision Blizzard, with all of the many pitfalls it's endured. Let's get back to Dilf HQ.
Back in the office, I tried to put the pieces together and understand what drove this man to be the way he is. But no matter how much I tried to make the connections, things just weren't clicking yet. Was there something wrong with my process? Or did I simply need to dig deeper? Daddy issues is one thing, one very common thing with the ultra-rich, but there's got to be more to this. So let's finally address the elephant in the room, shall we? Activision Blizzard have long courted controversy in any manner of ways, but its 2020s have been something else. I suspect you don't need me to go into detail, and there's frankly so many cases of various kinds of misconduct that it would be near impossible to go over them all. July 20th, 2021 is when the floodgates truly opened, however. After murmurings of a toxic culture circled online, it was soon revealed that Activision Blizzard were being sued by California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing for constant sexual harassment and a frat boy culture. I don't mean to sound elitist, but a frat boy culture developing at the place that made World of Warcraft is a bit like a playboy culture developing at Year 9 maths. The lawsuit alleges some fucking unbelievable shit. Supposedly, women were kicked out of lactation rooms so that men could hold meetings there. They were lambasted for leaving work early so they could pick up their kids from school or daycare, and they were constantly subject to vile and inappropriate comments about their looks and bodies. Some accounts even mention seeing other high-ranking Activision Blizzard executives grabbing and physically groping women against their will. This quote here is pretty astonishing. Alex Afrasiabi, the former senior creative director of World of Warcraft at Blizzard Entertainment, was permitted to engage in blatant sexual harassment with little to no repercussions. During a company event, an annual convention called BlizzCon, Afrasiabi would hit on female employees, telling them he wanted to marry them, attempting to kiss them, and putting his arms around them. This was in plain view of other male employees, including supervisors who had to intervene and pull him off female employees. Afrasiabi was so known to engage in harassment of females that his suite was nicknamed the Cosby Suite, after alleged R-word pissed Bill Cosby. And now we come to the Cosby Suite and the Cube Crawls, kind of the Blades of Azeroth of being a sex-starved lunatic. There's actually a picture of the Cosby Suite out there, and here it is. I was never any particularly big fan of Activision Blizzard games, aside from the occasional Spyro Crash remake or Hearthstone on and off, so I can't say that I recognise any of these now. Hold on. Is that Hearthstone game designer Dave Kotick? Oh no, I think it is! Because messages from a Facebook group with these guys in it were leaked around the same time the allegations dropped. Here's one where Dave tells Alex Afrasiabi he's gathering the hot chicks for the cause. Chicks, spelled with 2 X's in this instance. Type like a true pussy master there, Dave. Now, it needs to be said that Kotaku has reported that according to one of their sources, Kotick was one of the few people who intervened when they were being harassed by another Activision Blizzard employee. And apparently the hot chicks in question were his wife. Maybe there's not too much insidious to his messages here specifically, but he is still hanging out in a suite that he and his bros knowingly named after a convicted offender. Everyone in this picture has gone on to be identified since. There's Greg Street, who went on to Riot Games, Josh Mosquera from Bonfire Studios, and Jesse McCree! Oh, fuck. I even talked about Overwatch yet. I'm personally a fan of how they all elected to pose together on the bed for this picture, like a bunch of 10-year-olds at a sleepover. Maybe they all got tired of waiting for the hot chicks and just fucked each other instead. Also included in the lawsuit were allegations of cube crawls, where male employees would drink themselves into total inebriation and then go to every cubicle and act like a fucking freak to women. That's it. That's just what this lawsuit says. And among many unbelievable, astounding accusations, one of the most absolutely confounding is that refrigerators in nursing rooms had to be padlocked because male employees kept putting their beer in them and stealing employee breast milk. Someone else mentioned in the lawsuit by name was J. Allen Brack, then president of Blizzard Entertainment, and apparently his own barber's mortal enemy. The Meatloaf impersonator was said to have been aware of and complicit in many of the charges brought against Activision Blizzard, and he stepped down in August to pursue new opportunities, likely herding sheep on a farm somewhere in Scotland. I just want to say real quick, I don't think making fun of a person's appearance is ever okay under any circumstances. Thankfully, these are CEOs, not people. On this watershed lawsuit, Amanda Coate, a University of Oregon professor who studies sexism and gender identity in the video game industry, said, "What seems to be different now is the fact that people are recognizing these issues as being systemic and repeated rather than episodic. This is a particularly egregious lawsuit, but unfortunately, I was not really surprised. We have known for quite some time that sexism pervades many areas of gaming." On this watershed lawsuit, Bobby Kotick, CEO of Activision Blizzard, said, "It was Tuesday. You'd think surely ousting the president of the company who was named as complicit in these issues would change things, right? Well, apparently not much." In the years since, Activision Blizzard have been met with enough backlash to make a Kotaku writer espousing even the most basic left-wing virtues blush. Turns out not only are they deeply sexist, but racist too. Yes, in a twist even more shocking than one of the men pictured in the Cosby Suite going on to hold a high-ranking position at Riot Games, Activision Blizzard was soon exposed for normalising racial slurs in the workplace, holding back ethnically diverse people from getting promotions, and punishing those who spoke out against racism the same way that they punished people who spoke out against sexism. Then, of course, there's the controversial stack ranking. In January of 2023, 17-year veteran of Blizzard and former lead on WoW Classic, Brian Birmingham, quit the company after refusing to participate in its stack ranking system. The stack ranking system asks managers to anonymously rate their employees in terms of efficiency and productivity. Managers are told to rate their employees on a curve, meaning no matter how good you may think all of your employees are, you are encouraged to give at least 5% of them low rating, who will then be punished and given lower salaries. It's a draconian premise that Birmingham refused to participate in, and I have to give him huge credit for that, both for his bravery and for making me feel anything other than deep-seated dread upon hearing the word Birmingham. On his way out though, Birmingham wrote this. I'm told the forced stack ranking policy is a directive that came from the ABK level, above Mike Ybarra, who became Blizzard president after Randall Flagg left. I don't know for sure, but I suspect it's true. Everybody at Blizzard I've spoken to about this, including my direct supervisors, expressed disappointment about this policy. Now, there aren't a lot of people you could consider to be above Mike Ybarra, someone at the ABK level, as in someone overseeing the entire corporate infrastructure, and, given what we know about the company, likely someone with a distaste for women. Who could this person be? I need ideas. Cheesy, pass me my thinking pen. In anticipation of this video, I sent out a number of feelers to friends and contacts around Santa Monica, California to see if anyone could get me in touch with any current or former employees of Activision Blizzard. Unfortunately, it soon dawned upon me that I didn't have any friends and contacts in Santa Monica, California, and had just gotten high and texted my ex-girlfriend Monica again. But the very next day, I received an email from someone by the name of Steve, who had heard of my endeavour through a complicated chain of texts that had been sprung on by this very situation and that my therapist described as a learning experience. Steve claimed himself to be a former ABK employee and sounded like exactly the kind of guy I was looking for. He agreed to do the interview for a fee that I won't be comfortable disclosing in this video, but let's just say my commitment to detective work is absolute. Here's how that interview went. Was it Bobby Kotick?
Yeah.
Pretty illuminating stuff, but as ever, the rabbit hole goes deeper. Remember the name Mike Ybarra from a few minutes ago? You should. It's very weird. Okay, so post-recording update on this video, which has been in production for quite a while, and this story is still moving very fast. As of January 25th earlier this year, Mike Ybarra is gone from Blizzard amid a huge, ridiculous wave of layoffs. Now, everything I'm about to say about Mike Ybarra in this video is still true and still relevant. Just imagine I'm saying it all in past tense. After J. Allen Brack stepped down to clean more dust bunnies up with the back of his head, Mike Ybarra was named as one of his replacements. This time, Blizzard would be led by multiple people. Now helming Blizzard alongside Mike Ybarra were Mikolash, host of The Nightmare, Megatron, leader of the Decepticons, Mammon, Christian Demon Lord of Greed, and Jen O'Neill. Upon news of these new appointments, J. Allen Brack shared the following message. Quote, I am confident that Jen O'Neill and Mike Ybarra will provide the leadership Blizzard needs to realise its full potential and will accelerate the pace of change. I anticipate they will do so with passion and enthusiasm, and that they can be trusted to lead with the highest levels of integrity and commitment to the components of our culture that make Blizzard so special. The place I found this statement was on the Blizzard forums, by the way. The comment directly below this statement, or maybe this is a repost of some kind, I don't know how forums work, from user Mischeater read, not gonna lie, I'm kind of excited to see what Jen from Vicarious Visions does. Yay for a Diablo-related person in a leadership role. Looks like Jen O'Neill started in game testing and QA back in 1998 and worked her way up. Very cool. 3 months later, in November of 2021, Jen O'Neill was gone, publicly stating that she was inspired by the passion of everyone at the studio to move to a more industry-wide approach to improving diversity and inclusion. Makes sense. I too like to leave large groups of inspiring people behind when they inspire me. The reality is really quite shocking. Jen O'Neill was being paid less than her male counterpart, Mike Ybarra, and in what may be the single most insane thing I tell you in this video, supposedly privately complained of being sexually harassed. The Wall Street Journal reported that shortly after taking the job at Blizzard, O'Neill emailed Activision's legal department and complained that the company, quote, would never prioritize our people the right way. I mean, this is the fucking woman you put in charge. I'm not even gonna, no jokes here. This truly boggles the mind. In all the countless controversies Activision Blizzard have bumped their tiny little chodes into over the years, I feel as though this one gets swept under the rug far too much and doesn't get talked about nearly enough. In the wake of sweeping allegations of endless counts of sexism, harassment and abuse, they hired a woman to be president and then she left in 3 months because they were paying her less and even she was getting harassed. That is insane. It is absolutely unreal. How do we not talk about this bit more? Since then, Mike Ybarra has stayed on as sole president of Blizzard. Mammon quitting due to the financial failure of Overwatch 2 the following year, Megatron jumping ship to Amazon citing unsafe work conditions, and Mikolash tendering his resignation after having 3 pints of his breast milk stolen. Mike Ybarra, if your balls were even half as big as your cheekbones, you would have stepped down years ago, you big stupid pussy. All of these decisions come from somewhere, it's obvious. Somewhere that's able to enjoy the luxury of relative anonymity, that's able to cast down decisions from on high whilst being almost completely unreachable. Somewhere that looks like Jonah Hill if you put him in a washing machine for 5 hours. Because for some time we had suspected that maybe the problems at ABK had come from a presidential level, but when Pound Shop Alucard from Symphony of the Night departed and things stayed the same, we realised that wasn't the case. And this retroactively is especially obvious when you consider the history of Activision separately from Blizzard. In the lawsuit between gunmaker Remington Arms and the parents of the victims of the infamous Sandy Hook school shooting, a lawyer obtained and disclosed documents that revealed a secret deal between Remington and Activision to feature their ACR, or Adaptive Combat Rifle, in 2009's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Generally, games like Call of Duty use guns inspired by real-life weapons, but fewer actual guns you could find in reality. In this case, the Remington ACR was specifically included in Modern Warfare 2 for the sake of product placement. Remington were supposedly the ones to initiate the partnership. The following quote attributed to them in a memo showed they aimed to help create brand preference in the next generation and help the company win our fair share of these young consumers in the long run. A few years later, the Remington ACR would be discontinued due to poor sales and the company would go bankrupt twice, once in 2018 and once again in 2020. Maybe if you guys had tried to get the Grim Reaper in as a playable character, you could have sold more of everything. Just some food for thought. I know how much you Americans love food. It's no secret that these first-person American military's balls clapping up against your chin shooters have numerous shady backroom deals with gun manufacturers and army personnel, all for the sake of glorifying violent patriotism and the selling of death, but it should be less surprising that Bobby Kotick's Activision would engage in such a deal than maybe any other company in the world, barring perhaps only Andrew Wilson's EA. Maybe I'll do a video about him one day. He is perhaps the most comically evil-looking man I've ever seen. He looks like Robbie Rotten if he... Actually, I'm going to save it. After all, Kotick's Activision is the corporation greedy enough to patent matchmaking systems that encourage players to participate in microtransactions. Seriously, for those unfamiliar, this patent was filed in 2015 and approved on October 17th of 2017. Let's read some of the things posited in this patent. If the player purchased a particular weapon, the microtransaction engine may match the player in a gameplay session in which the particular weapon is highly effective, giving the player an impression that the particular weapon was a good purchase. This may encourage the player to make future purchases to achieve similar gameplay results. For instance, the microtransaction engine may match a more expert or marquee player with a junior player to encourage the junior player to make game-related purchases of items possessed or used by the marquee player. A junior player may wish to emulate the marquee player by obtaining weapons or other items used by the marquee player. According to the patent, they also intend to scour data from player profiles to identify them as soft targets. Quote, in a particular example, the junior player may wish to become an expert sniper in a game, as determined by the player profile. The microtransaction engine may match the junior player with a player that is a highly skilled sniper in the game. In this manner, the junior player may be encouraged to make game-related purchases such as a rifle or other items used by the marquee player. This is them very nakedly coming out and saying, we're going to match the players who didn't pay for the broken shit with the ones who did, so they feel compelled to buy the broken shit. It's unbelievable. It's the definition of pay to win. They're just saying the quiet part out loud. Here's a quote from an ABK spokesperson on the patent. This was an exploratory patent filed in 2015 by an R&D team working independently from our game studios. It has not been implemented in-game. Then continuing on to say, but rest assured, when it is, it will be extremely fucking cringe. And yet, even with all these cartoonishly evil schemes to make money in place, wealth disparity at Activision Blizzard has been immense. In 2020, Business Insider reported that some employees said they were paid so poorly that they used free coffee as an appetite suppressant, skipped meals in the employee cafeteria, and, in one case, chose not to have kids due to an inability to afford them. Employees then began sharing their salaries with each other, usually an anti-worker workplace taboo. The resulting spreadsheet showed them what they'd all suspected, that not only were they being grossly underpaid, but that Bobby Kotick was not suffering financially one bit for it. In particular, game testers and customer service representatives have seen ABK's stock prices and net worth soar year on year and yet financially struggled still, whilst Kotick often takes home upwards of 30 million, or in more recent years, even more ridiculous numbers. Even in spite of all the bad press, resignations and lawsuits, how is it that ABK's profits continue rising year on year aside from backroom deals with merchants of war? Well, it's simple. Call of Duty. Yes, if Call of Duty were a cow, it would have died of exhaustion 10 years ago, its tits now resembling toothpaste tubes that were half empty, Bobby Kotick gleefully sucking the spoiled milk off the nearby soil with a straw fashioned out of a female employee's umbilical cord. "I just puke this out in the fall and every dude bro with a backwards snapback will buy it," he says to no one in particular, because his only friends, a cabal of rich douchebags, are out on a yacht somewhere talking about cryptocurrency in an attempt to distract themselves from how much their wives and children hate them. And he's right, buy it they will. Every year, despite thousands of games with more earnest intentions and artistic integrity coming out, Call of Duty is one of the most profitable games, if not the most profitable game of the year. This is likely in large part due to the fact that they come out every year, like a Marvel movie or what Assassin's Creed was doing for the longest time. They refuse to leave the public consciousness. It's almost a routine at this point. You buy the new Call of Duty game, especially if you're a fucking idiot, which lots of people are. Call of Duty is able to release every year because in 2021, Activision made the supremely cynical decision to put practically every studio they had on Call of Duty, feeding the profit machine. This is obviously not comparable to so many of the other things we've talked about so far, but I find it so deeply depressing that my beloved Toys for Bob and Beanox were put on fucking Call of Duty of all things. These were the only people keeping Spyro and Crash alive, and for the longest time they've been support studios on a game series that may as well make real people dead. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled deserves to be talked about more as one of the best remakes ever, by the way. CTR alone already put every Mario Kart game in the dirt on a fundamental level, and then Nitro Fueled is literally just a better looking remake with more content and more unlockables. Quite literally, my only problem with it is the microtransactions, which Activision shoved into the game after quite literally promising that they wouldn't. Growing up as someone whose favourite game franchises were Pokemon, Sonic, Crash and Spyro, I am in immeasurable pain and everything I love turns to dust. So, all these decisions seem pretty traceable to the head of Activision, the company that would cannibalise Blizzard in 2008 and become the looming factory of terror we know as ABK today. Surely, despite his attempts to stay in the shadows and scapegoat any number of other people below him, we can attribute more or less all of these decisions to Bobby Kotick, right? Well, I want to say yes. This is what things like Brian Birmingham's tweets tell us. Hell, it's just what logic tells us. But in the name of journalistic integrity and good detective work, I want to be sure. I want to know he's the one passing down these edicts. In the pursuit of this confirmation, I sent out a flock of highly coordinated carrier pigeons all over the west coast of the United States in an attempt to make contact with some current and former Activision Blizzard employees. Unfortunately, my pigeons were supposedly intercepted by a man in Florida who sent me quite an intimidating note in which he claimed to have taken them for use in his own personal private pigeon army. At the very least, my favourite of the bunch and the apparent lone escapee, Bruce, would return to me a few days later, albeit rigged with an explosive device attached to his right leg that I successfully defused by correctly guessing which colour wire to cut. In an ironic twist, due to my feud with this nefarious Floridian pigeon poacher making national headlines, I soon received correspondence from a man named Glenn, who claimed himself to be a former ABK employee and sounded like exactly the kind of guy I was looking for. He agreed to do an interview with me in exchange for a fee I won't be disclosing in this video, but let's just say my commitment to detective work is absolute. I found it quite funny what a resemblance Glenn had to Steve, who I interviewed earlier, but more importantly, I found the information he disclosed to me in our interview to be incredibly valuable. Here's how that interview went down. Do you think it was Bobby Kotick?
Probably.
CEOs are good at creating this kind of corporate mire where you can reasonably assume that all the shitty decisions you hate are down to them, but as normal people on the ground, we're never really sure. Especially when they're shying away from the topic and throwing other people under the bus. Logic and reason suggest that all the things we hate about ABK are down to Bobby Kotick, but let's go over some last little tidbits about the man, the myth, the bell end, and see how we feel after the end of it. There's a story by Forbes from the year 2009 called Activision's Unlikely Hero. It's probably the most personal piece of writing I could find about Bobby Kotick, save for some pentagrams I found scrawled on the walls of a dead virgin's bedroom last week. It starts with a rare mention of his mother. Robert Kotick's mother dates his compulsive capitalism back to toddlerhood, when a young Bobby sold her ashtray to a friend who had come over for a playdate. Ooh, she smokes. Sigmund Freud, where you at? The only other dirt of note I could find on Kotick's mother was that she was a teacher, by the way. In an interview with Variety, he once said, "I am not like other CEOs that are anti-union. I have a mother who was a teacher. I have no aversion to a union. What I do have an aversion to is a union that doesn't play by the rules." This coming from someone who made headlines for attempts at union busting with all the subtlety of a firework being shot out of a man's arse crack, by the way. The Forbes article continues to say some things that are going to age about as well as the average Activision Blizzard game. In reference to reports of him actually not liking video games at all, it says, "Somehow, a chief executive blind to the beauty of video games developed an unmatched eye for spotting hits." Keep that quote in mind. Kotick, now, then 45, traces his ascent to the lessons he learned as a teenage hustler trying to escape the tedium of suburban Long Island, New York. He happily recalls his most profitable high school business venture, renting out Manhattan night spots like Studio 54 on off nights and throwing parties for underage kids. Keep that quote in mind. And when Kotick looked at EA, he saw a booming company riven by fights between passionate game designers and spreadsheet-driven managers. He figured he could do it better. He moved Activision to Los Angeles, keeping only the name and 8 of 150 employees. He raised $5 million from casino mogul Stephen Wynn, a man Bobby Kotick called a mentor and a second father. And you won't believe some of the fucking allegations he's got following him around. Edward Lampert, a private equity capitalist, and the Shays, a rich couple he met while on vacation in Thailand. Sure, fuck it, why not? The following year, he raised $40 million in a stock offering. His pitch to game makers was that he would be more fun to work for than the alternative. Quote, "EA has tried to commoditize development. We won't absorb you into a big Death Star culture." Lots to unpack there. Let's go ahead and cross-reference. Let's go ahead and cross-reference that first quote with some tweets from one Seamus Blackley. Blackley, if you don't know, is generally credited as the father of the original Xbox. He led the team that built the fucking thing. And as of the making of this video, Kotick's Activision Blizzard have successfully been acquired by Microsoft in the biggest acquisition in gaming history. Kotick has been removed from post, but leaves with a huge bonus of over $200 million, what many are calling a golden parachute, likely to go with all the golden showers he's liable to indulge in. Blackley, who created the console that Microsoft now bases a key part of its identity around, has had some very interesting things to say about Bobby Kotick, as you can see in this tweet here. Or here. Or here? Who the fuck's fucking keyframing this fucking thing? When we pitched Guitar Hero to Bobby, he told us nobody would ever stock it and turn it down, only to buy it later. I reminded him that he'd literally said that to me about Xbox only a few years before. He laughed. Now he's being bought by Xbox. Karma's a bitch.
A lot of sirens in Basildon.
I wonder why that is. A couple more, just because these are really fun. In response to reports of walkouts at Activision Blizzard protesting Kotick's supposed knowledge of its culture of abuse, it couldn't happen to a nicer man. I went up against Bobby 3+ times in lawsuits with Double Fine, Harmonix and Respawn and some others, so don't misinterpret this. If he was a nicer man, this wouldn't happen. You're such a cunt. Okay.
Shut up.
Last one for the cherry on top. Actually, on pure financial terms, he's great. I once went to a talk of his where some high school kids got to ask questions at the end. One girl asked about Activision's green policies, and Bobby said, "I think 40% year-on-year franchise growth is pretty green, don't you?" She almost cried. For someone so crucially important to the history of the mega corporation that just bought this man's company out to be so excoriating in his criticisms is a pretty astounding thing, and I think speaks to what an absolute cum stain he must be. In response to this last tweet, legendary game designer at Double Fine Tim Schafer remarks, "And he was okay in Moneyball." Yeah, he was in Moneyball with Brad Pitt and that tumble-dried version of himself. How and why was he in Moneyball? I have no idea. I just assume he heard the word money from 500 miles away via echolocation and just sort of materialised on set. Because of this role, he's now a member of SAG-AFTRA. I guess further proof that he is truly not anti-union. Bobby loves stressing as much as he can in interviews that he's actually on your side. He wants to seem as diplomatic and pro-workers' rights as possible. In the run-up to the 2016 US presidential election, he endorsed Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton, which, as we all know, is basically one step away from joining Antifa. Of course, there's a lot of donations to Republican causes over the years as well, but forget about those. Here's another quote from that Variety article. Although he has become synonymous with Activision, he's quick to point out that he does not have control of the company through voting rights, as some media moguls do, and that he owns less than 5% of its shares. Quote, "No board of directors in a non-controlled company is going to allow the CEO of an enterprise to stay running the enterprise if these things were truthful," he says, in regards to the many allegations. Let's analyse this. Could this be true? Could Kotick really not have as much control of the company as we thought? Maybe we've been making too many assumptions, overlooking some crucial details. Cheesy, pass me my thinking glasses.
No.
Because CEOs obviously have huge influence over who sits on that board. They shouldn't, and in some cases they don't, but it's not hard to finagle the rules and get a bunch of your buddies sitting around that table with you. Convention suggests that the CEO does not pick the board if they did not found the company, which Kotick did not. And yet regardless, he's managed to wrangle a bunch of sycophants and yes men onto that board with him who'll support him no matter what he does. How am I so sure of this? Because I'm smart, and because of actual reporting. In 2021, Bloomberg reported that Activision's board is full of CEO's old friends, most notably Kotick's old business partner, Brian Kelly, who purchased his first stake in Activision with Kotick in 1990. Kelly is the chairman of the board, by the way. A majority of the rest of the board of directors are people who Kotick has long-standing ties to and who have every obligation to keep him in power. This is surely how he survived credible reporting that suggests he had full knowledge of the sexism and prejudice that permeated throughout Activision Blizzard. This is surely how he survived credible reporting that he threatened to kill his assistant over voicemail. Voicemail is what they call those dark portals that he projects his voice through, by the way. Now, I'm not Bobby Kotick, but if I was, which Bobby Kotick is, I would do everything in my power to stack the deck in my favour. To line my board of directors with all my cunt friends who can aid me in slowly gaslighting the general public into believing that I myself may not be such a massive after all. Well over 1,000 Activision Blizzard employees signed a petition calling for the removal of Kotick in 2021. They organised walkouts and protests, but their voices fell on deaf ears, as have most of my attempts to reach out to them. But while I cannot seem to make contact with those on the ground floor at Activision Blizzard, this stuff about the board of directors is so out there, so publicly available, and so crooked from the very top. You've got to think, surely someone at least in middle management has to have an opinion on this. You know, social media managers, community managers, vice torturer. Well, forgoing any more attempts to make direct contact with the employees, I decided to adjust my approach and instead start snooping around for leaked documents, email correspondence, and the like.
I abseiled down the side of Activision Blizzard HQ at approximately 6 AM on what I believed to be a particularly chilly Sunday morning in late November last year, and successfully broke into the HR department 8 minutes later after taking a quick break halfway down the wall for a very tall piss. My search for answers proved sadly fruitless, as shortly after entering the HR manager's office I was captured by security, who informed me that it was in fact Wednesday, a fact that I admittedly should have gathered sooner given that there had been workers only a few feet away from me at all times, working. I was informed that they had all seen everything, including my piss, and given that I had now exposed my penis to a considerable amount of workers, I was threatened with promotion. I of course accepted, hoping to change the organisation from the inside, mostly with a series of compulsory weekly listens of Masayoshi Takanaka's 1979 jazz fusion masterpiece, All of Me, which I believe would really get our vibes aligned. Only a few moments after this proposal, however, security realised that I was in fact not an employee after all, and launched me out of a 7th-storey window with the force of an Olympic javelin thrower. Thankfully, my fall was broken by an elderly woman who appeared to have gotten lost in the car park, and I survived, but just a few days later I received an email informing me that I was strictly prohibited from entering the premises again, and that being seen within 20 miles of Activision Blizzard HQ from here on out would result in firm legal action.
Pretty suspicious, Activision Blizzard. What are you hiding?
The allegations and controversies that swirl around Activision Blizzard are so mountainous that you might find yourself thinking or even commenting something along the lines of, I can't believe you didn't bring up the time Bobby Kotick ate a baby on live TV. I can't believe you didn't mention this or that. If there's something you're particularly surprised that I didn't mention in this video, that's because going on in it likely would have taken it out of scope. There's so much shit following this guy around, and there's only so many allegations that I can cover in so much time. And also, I hate doing research, that's why I just make shit up in these videos, and will continue to do so. But I would be remiss if not to mention Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book, a directory of countless celebrities, politicians and business moguls, all of whom Jeffrey Epstein carried contact details for. It's kind of like the cast list of an Avengers movie about nonces. And the media have done a pretty great job of stamping out discussion around this Black Book despite how explosive it is. It's another one of those things that you feel like you really should hear more about. Yes, Bobby Kotick's name is in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book, as is Bill Clinton, which I find interesting because Bobby Kotick has spent so many years of his life donating to Republican causes, and yet when the 2016 US presidential election came about, he was suddenly very ready to endorse the Clintons. I find that interesting in the same way that when I walk into my kitchen and find a steaming cat turd on the floor with my cat nearby, I say, interesting. The Black Book is a great reminder, in case you ever needed it, of just how much Bobby Kotick is like the rest of the fiscal elites, no matter how much he tries to make himself seem like one of the good ones. At the onset of this video, I stated that its purpose was to dig deep into the personal history of men like Kotick, to see if we could find something human, something relatable. And hey, he's taken pay cuts before, he's spoken out in favour of democratic causes, he's given to them. He clearly had a strained relationship with his dad and doesn't like talking about his mother a lot, and not a lot can be found about her out there, which I think suggests the same thing. Again, parallels with Trump. Could this man really be a cunt?
Yes.
Obviously. I mean, you think any of that shit outweighs anything else mentioned in this video? Oh, boo-hoo, your dad wasn't very good to you. My dad has forgotten what day my birthday is twice, and I've still felt strangely little urge to touch kids. He's got every hallmark of every shitty billionaire. He's got shady tax affairs, he's got some scumbag partner helping him keep all those skeletons hidden in his closet. Ignore all these interviews and think pieces about how he gets video games despite prior reports that he dislikes them and actively thinks they're a waste of time. You can so easily find any number of the interviews with him and some crusty old white guy in an ill-fitting dress shirt who might as well be the Kingdom Hearts nobody version of a Scientologist or a serial killer going, well, Bobby, it seems these video games are making quite a lot of money nowadays. And he goes, yes, they do make a lot of money. I like money, that's why I do this. And even as he floats above the wreckage of the world he helped create in his little golden parachute, you can find any number of Reddit posts from pseudo-intellectuals saying some shit like, well, you don't have to like him, but he kept the shareholders happy. Ah, the shareholders, of course! How could I forget the fucking shareholders? Shareholder satisfaction. Truly the Mount Everest of business leadership. Listen, I don't know much about business, but I don't think that keeping the shareholders happy is particularly hard when you're the company that owns Call of Duty and Candy Crush. I think once every financial quarter one of your shareholders turns to you and goes, listen Bobby, this Call of Duty stuff makes a lot of money. You should make more of those. And then you go, okay, and then you fart one out every year and people eat it up completely regardless of quality. Boom! The shareholders are happy. Well done. Excellent business acumen. Masterful gambit, sir. And right now, who knows where Bobby Kotick will go next after the Microsoft acquisition. The acquisition that closed on Friday the 13th of October, the month in which Halloween occurs, which I'm sure has no symbolic relevance at all.
Maybe in 2 weeks' time we'll get another breaking news story about how he's rounded up every woman within a 10-mile radius and fired them out of a cannon. Maybe he'll retire to an island paradise surrounded by all the rest of the worst people in the world, receiving a perpetual hand job by a machine powered by tears. Maybe on August 27th, 2029 at approximately 8:45 PM, he'll be backed up over by my uncle's dinged up old Ford Focus which went mysteriously missing from him weeks prior in an incident from which he'll never recover. I don't know. But I do know this, Bobby Kotick. You're a wretched cunt, and the world will be a better place without you in it.
Wow, he's a cunt. As we come to a close today, I ask that you lend me your ear for just a few more minutes, because I want to talk to you about bullying. Maybe you've made it this far in the video thinking, well, that was depressing. Even with all the jokes, it was just a lot of talk about evil men getting away with evil things. But I don't think it was depressing at all. I had a great time. Because the world's elite may not hold men like this accountable, but for a while, I was able to, in front of thousands of you. And that's powerful. More powerful than we realise. I grew up with undiagnosed autism until the age of 16. I know how bullying works, how to make it most effective, most cutting. I've also been a comedian and satirist on and off for a few years now. I believe I am one of the most qualified people in the world to bully someone. And I choose to use my powers for good. We've seen time and time again that it's not the poor reviews or the legal scrutiny that scares or upsets these big ultra-rich CEOs, because they have the money to weather any of these storms. I support protests and walkouts and petitions and think we should keep doing them, but the thing that really upsets these people is the way we talk about them. Bobby Kotick is clearly deeply insecure about his public reputation, so much so that he's bringing up his pro-union stance in interviews with little provocation. He's talking about his kids receiving death threats, which, going by his track record, presumably came from him. You don't need to look far to find examples of billionaires being deeply insecure and deeply shaken by the one thing they can't make go away with money: the court of public opinion. All it took was for the former editor-in-chief of a satire site to ratio Elon Musk on Twitter a couple times, and off he went, embarking on a sort of grand version of the character arc you'd expect to see a minor villain go through in Naruto before being one-shot by Choji. The fact that I can say the things I've said so far, the fact that we can talk about these things publicly, is what stops things from being quite as depressing as they could be. This is a power, and we need to use it. As a quick aside, YouTube, please don't demonetize me. Everything I've said today, I've meant to add the context in Minecraft. You might not think you can make a difference in this world, but you can. We, as the internet, basically bullied NFTs out of existence. By just shitting on them relentlessly and refusing to engage with them, we killed them. The time has come now to bully billionaires out of existence. It doesn't matter if you can't make a video like this, if you don't consider yourself a creative, if you can't write or speak in public or make good art. Hell, most of the people on YouTube can't, they just rank Pixar villains for a living. Even if you can't sign a petition or join a march or stage a walkout, you still have a moral responsibility, if you consider yourself to be someone who is not a cunt, to bully these reprehensible ghouls relentlessly. Even if you can't do any of these things, you can still send a tweet that says you hope a billionaire dives headfirst into oncoming traffic and it might be the most beautiful thing you ever write. I, for one, won't feel complete as a satirist until I know for a fact that I played a crucial role in a CEO splattering his brains all over his bathroom wall in Minecraft, and I hope you'll join me on that journey. See you next time. Hello, so I'm actually not done yet. Sorry to keep dragging this out, but a couple things to say. Man, I was really nervous about making this video for numerous reasons. One, it was my first time ever being on camera like this and seeing myself back in 4K, which is quite an experience. I have a skin condition called seborrheic dermatitis. Basically means at random times, like it flares up and parts of my face and my scalp get really scaly and flaky and horrible, so I avoided a lot of up close shots because quite often, I think a few times in the video actually, you can see like little kind of white bits in my hair or like little red kind of marks on my head, and that's my skin condition. I worry that people will see that and think that I'm like, yeah, they'll make assumptions about like hygiene or whatever and think I'm scummy and stuff, and it's like, no, it's I can't do anything about it. It literally just, it does that sometimes. It's just like that sometimes. You know, we don't have a teleprompter or anything of any kind because of course I don't have a fucking teleprompter, so reading my lines and remembering my lines is really hard. It's just quite a roller coaster to watch yourself back in 4K. We bought a mic, and the mic, the wire was way too short to really be doing anything with, and I wanted to kind of move around and do some funky shots and stuff, but the mic, the wire was long enough to work with that. So when I'm doing like indoor stuff, like when I'm recording at quote-unquote Dilf HQ, you know, it's with the camera's internal microphone, and there's a very noticeable difference between that and when I'm recording from my microphone on my desk. And maybe you don't notice it, but it really bothers me. It pissed me off. I was like, oh, it sounds so different. Basically, I'm really proud of this video. I really like it, but watching it back, I can already see some things to improve on that I want to fix for next time. And this would be the point in the video where I say, if you want to help me get a teleprompter or a wireless microphone or any of these other things, check out my Patreon. But actually I'm not going to do that because I have an announcement to make. This series will continue, as you may expect, but it won't be here. Shortly after we left Hard Drive, a bunch of Hard Drive alum and myself, we all put our heads together and have started work on something new, something that I think is quite exciting. We're not ready to reveal a lot yet, and I have been advised to stay tight-lipped and keep this quote-unquote announcement as minimalistic as possible. So all I'll say is, as you can probably imagine from the nature of this announcement, I will be heading up their YouTube channel. And clearly someone is really excited about it. You good, buddy? How do you want to do this? Oh, hey, there you go. Go on, over the shoulder. He likes to sit like a parrot. Yeah, I'll be heading up their YouTube channel. So I would suggest you go and subscribe to them there. I'll put like a link up on screen and stuff. Go follow them on Twitter, because we have a Twitter account and we're gonna have tons of stuff. All I can say is that I'm really excited about it and it's gonna be really cool, but we're not ready to show you everything just yet. Give us a few weeks, we're working on it. I hate to direct you to another channel so soon after I just left another one, but I believe in these people who I'm working with. I believe in the vision of this thing and I want to do it. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm moving over to Palette Swap again, and I'm going to be heading up the YouTube channel there. We're going to do things our way, and we're really excited about it. So yeah, Ted, you got any thoughts on that? None. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. So look forward to that on Palette Swap. I'll be making an official announcement soon when we're ready. Stay tuned, watch this space, and look forward to it. And I'll see you all on Palette Swap. Thank you guys. Say bye, Ted.